Alright, background declaration 5669, a mandatory form required to be filled out for your spousal sponsorship application. So let's cover where to find it, who fills this out, a general overview of the form and various sections, and understanding questions especially about previous refusals which confuse a lot of people, this personal history and address history section, and when do you actually add a dependent in this form. So assume I'm the sponsor, I could be a PR or a citizen of Canada, and I'm sponsoring my wife, so my wife becomes the principal applicant. So this form is for my wife and any dependent children that she may have over the age of 18. This form is not to be filled out by me, the sponsor, or my wife's mom, dad, brothers or sisters. So you'll start here. This is the PR portal. This is where the principal applicant, my wife in this case, creates the account using her own email address and password and starts the application. And now this is inside the application. One of the digital forms is 5669. So this form is a digital form and has to be filled out right here inside the portal. So once you click on start, you'll get to this introduction page which gives you some basic information about what this form is all about. And a row will appear here for my wife, the principal applicant. This is where she's going to click on start or edit, and then she fills out all these sections to complete her version of the form. And the way this form works is when my wife fills this out, she'll have to fill out all these sections by herself, but some information is going to be pre-populated already for her, such as her name, her date of birth, and her current address. They will already be populated here, so you are not going to be able to make changes here. And that is rightly so, because these basic details are being picked up from the profile page. So I'm referring to this profile page. Before you even start filling out your digital forms, you will first have to fill out this profile page with your basic information such as your name, date of birth, your address, and information about your dependents. And then this information will show up at specific sections of these digital forms, including 5669. And this profile section, this mailing address, especially this dependent section, can get very confusing when you're starting your application for the first time. So I've covered in detail how to fill out this profile section, how to think of this mailing and residential address, and most importantly, how to add dependents in this section in this video, which is showing up on the cards here, and it's linked in the description below. I've covered various scenarios taking various age groups of dependents and how adding them here in the profile page affects your digital forms, including 5669. So I'll highly encourage, if you have not already seen that video, stop this video right now and go check that video out and learn how to fill this profile page and the dependent section. And once you have gained a full understanding of that, then you can come back and continue with this 5669. So now I'm going to assume you've already watched that video, so I won't repeat myself much. I'm just going to go straight into this 5669. Then section A, personal details. You'll notice that the full name is already populated here because it's picked up from the profile page. So if you want to make corrections, you can't make them here because this is uneditable. You will have to go back to the profile page right here and make the corrections here, and then those corrections will reflect back here in this 5669. Then this native script is pretty straightforward. You can just go to Google, type your name in English and select the script that you want converted in, and then basically click these double boxes to copy your converted script and paste it here. And just to note, these instructions for native script only apply to people's names. So names of the principal applicant, her mom, her dad, will have to be converted into native script also. But these instructions don't apply to names of your colleges or universities or places you've lived or employers that you've worked for. Only people's names need to be converted in native script. Then date of birth, again, this will be pre-populated because it's picked up from the profile page. Then here are personal details of my wife's father. So last name, first name, also converted into native script. His date of birth, if deceased, then his date of death. Then the city of birth, country of birth, pretty straightforward. Then under personal details of your mother, family name at birth. So this means that my wife's mother's last name at birth or before marriage. Basically the last name that she had been using until she changed her last name after marriage. Then given name is obviously the first name, then date of birth, date of death if applicable, city of birth, country of birth, pretty straightforward. Alright, so next up is section B, questionnaire. This section scares off a lot of people because it asks some questions about previous visa refusals or convictions or jail time or any serious physical or mental disorder. The idea is to declare all your background information honestly and truthfully. A lot of my subscribers have recently reached out to me and informed me that their agents are advising them not to disclose all the information correctly here in these questions. Essentially meaning that even if the answer to a particular question, let's say visa refusal, is yes, the agents often advise the applicants to answer no. Basically, the agents are advising the applicants to lie in this form right here. So, if you have an agent like that who's advising you such a thing, then that should be a huge red flag for you, because it's pretty much a guarantee that the agent will get you into trouble down the line. Now, some applicants might be able to get away by lying in these questions, not answering truthfully about previous visa refusals or denial of admission, but a lot of applicants do get caught. Because when you lie in this particular form, an IRCC is going to conduct your background check down the line anyway, and if they find anything that you did not properly disclose, that will be considered as lying and misrepresentation, and you will have a refusal right away, and it will have dire consequences to your future applications as well. So proceed with extreme caution here. Do not lie about any previous visa refusals, not just to Canada or any other country. Be truthful, be honest. Even if there is a conviction against you or anything that you feel might harm your application, you should still disclose it in the spirit of being complete and transparent. Don't hide anything. And one more thing, it says here, have you or any of your family members listed in this application ever? And then asks all these questions. So the sponsor's background has nothing to do here. The principal applicant's mom, dad, brothers or sisters, their background information has nothing to do here. So for now, because this version of 5669 is being filled out by the principal applicant for themselves, you don't have to think about any of your dependent children or family members. This is strictly for the principal applicant's background. Okay. So number one, being convicted of a crime or offense in Canada for which a pardon has not been granted under the Criminal Records Act of Canada. So this is inside Canada. In case you committed a violation and it's still ongoing, it's not been resolved, then you answer yes. And then down here, you can provide a reasonable explanation as to what that particular case is, and any other additional supporting documents related to that you can upload in the other category when you upload your supporting documents. The number two is the same thing but outside of Canada, so any other country or territory. The number three is made previous claims for refugee protection. So if this applies to you, then answer yes and provide additional supporting documentation and explanation down here. Otherwise, you can just answer no. The number four is being refused refugee status, an immigrant or permanent resident visa, or a visitor or temporary resident visa for Canada or any other country or territory. So for example, let's say you applied for a TRV under dual intent or regular TRV, or if you applied for a work permit or a student visa or any kind of visa to Canada or any other country and it got refused, then you should answer yes here and then provide the explanation here in as little as possible but as concise and clear as possible. Just keep in mind that having a previous visa refusal for a TRV or a work permit does not impact your spousal sponsorship application. So do not be afraid in telling them the truth about this refusal. A lot of people get refusals for TRV. It's pretty common. Even with the new policy, they still get refusals, but the spousal sponsorship application still comes through. So a previous TRV refusal or a student visa refusal or refusal of a work permit for Canada or any other country will not negatively impact your sponsorship application as long as the refusal was not on very serious grounds and you can provide a reasonable explanation for the refusal and you answer all these questions honestly and truthfully. The number five is being refused admission to or ordered to leave Canada or any other country or territory. So a lot of people confuse this question 5 with question 4. So this question 5 basically means that you flew to a country and when you were at the airport, you were not really allowed in that country because of whatever reason. Basically, you were denied admission at the port of entry. So you could never get through immigration of that country. So let's say you flew from New Delhi to Toronto and you landed at YYZ, but you could never get through immigration for whatever reason and you had to go back. It does happen to a lot of applicants. So if this was your case, if you had to go back after landing in that country, whether it's Canada or any other country, then you will answer yes and then you explain why that happened. And if you were already inside that country and you were ordered to leave, let's say you were deported for some reason, you also have to answer yes and then declare why that happened in this explanation box. So this question 4 is primarily about refusal of an application for Canada or any other country that you did. And question 5 is being refused admission in that country from the airport or immigration when you try to fly in that country. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, these will be no for majority of the applicants, but if it does apply to you, then answer yes and then provide the associated documentation to make as good a case as possible. Then number 11 is any serious disease or physical or mental disorder. So first of all, if you have any serious condition, don't panic, don't be afraid, just disclose it here. Having a serious condition is not really grounds for them to refuse you admission or deny your application. They are usually only concerned with serious diseases which are also communicable, which you can come here and spread to other people. But any other condition that is confined to you, no matter how serious that might be, you should still be fine. So regardless of whatever you have, disclose it anyway and be safe. And that will complete your background declaration section. Okay, so next up is section C, education. So here they are asking for the number of years of school you've successfully completed for each of these following levels. So elementary or primary is usually from kindergarten up until grade 6 or 7 or 8, depending on whatever is the standard in your country. So where my wife is from, India, it's usually 8 years of elementary school and then 4 years of secondary school. So basically 8 plus 4, 12 years of basic schooling. And then she did her 3 years of university degree, which was a bachelor's degree. She did not have any trade education, trade schooling, so she put 0 here. Again, you don't have to stick with a specific format, so go with whatever is the standard in your country for the elementary and secondary school. And then for university, however many years of university education you have done, you can simply put that here. So my wife had only done bachelor's for 3 years, that's why she put 3 here. But let's say you have done a bachelor's and a master's, so you simply add those number of years and then you can put them here. And then they ask you to give full details of all your secondary, post-secondary education, including university, college and apprenticeship here. So the order will be from the most recent, meaning the most advanced degree that you've done, and going back in time until your high school or maybe secondary education. So my wife started off with her bachelor's degree, her most advanced degree, and then she went back in time until her 10th grade. So here's the information about bachelor's, and then she kept adding education until her 10th grade. So here's 12th grade, here's 11th grade, and here's 10th grade. And that was it. She did not go beyond 10th grade and it worked out for us. So even you don't have to go as far back as your elementary school. If you want to, if you have time on your plate, go ahead, do that. But I think it's overkill. You don't really need to do this. And another thing, these fields right here have specific character limits. So name of the institution has a character limit of 24 characters, city and country has a character limit of 21, certificate or diploma field has a character limit of 17 characters, and field of study has a character limit of 17 characters. So you have to stay within this character limit. The problem is if the name of your university is longer than 24 characters, or the field of your study or type of your certificate is longer than 17 characters, then you can't really put those characters here. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to save and continue and move to the next step. So if that's the case, if your university name exceeds the character limit, then what you can do is use abbreviation here. It's fine, it's not a problem. A lot of people do that. And then any additional details, basically the full name and the full details, you can provide in a separate letter of explanation. And then you can upload that under the additional supporting documents in the other category. Alright, so next up is section D, personal history. So now we are getting deeper into the background section. So they're asking you to provide details of your personal history, basically your activity for the past 10 years or since your 18th birthday. Basically what this means is you go back 10 years from the time that you're doing the sponsorship application or until your 18th birthday, whichever is the earlier time period. So for example, when you're applying for spousal sponsorship, let's say you're 25 years of age, then you don't have to go back 10 years because your 18th birthday is before that. So you should only go back until the age of 18. But let's say you are 30 years of age right now when you're applying for spousal sponsorship, then you need to provide your activity details since you were 20 years of age, meaning go back 10 years. And activity is basically what you were doing in the past 10 years. This can include your job, whether you were employed by a company or you were self-employed. Even if you were unemployed, you still account for that. If you were studying, you account for that and stuff like that. The important thing is to not leave any gaps in time. So basically providing all the information about all your activities over the past 10 years that you've done or since your 18th birthday. And the way to do this, as mentioned here, is to start from the most recent activity, meaning what you are doing at this point right now when you are submitting your spousal sponsorship application, and then go back in time. So I'll just show you what my wife filled out as an example, and that should give you some perspective. So assume that my wife is an inland applicant living in Canada since January 2023, and right now, as of September 2023, she's applying for spousal sponsorship inland. So since the time she started living in Canada from January 2023 through now, September 2023 is her activity 1. She's listed activity as unemployed because let's assume she's not been working for the past 9 months. She's living in Toronto, Canada, so city and country field. Her status in Canada is a visitor, and under name of company, employer, she simply wrote not applicable, unemployed, because she has not been working for the past 9 months. So this to date in the personal history 1 section also signifies the current date, because let's say she's unemployed right now and this activity of being unemployed and living as a visitor in Canada is ongoing. She can't really write ongoing or current or present keywords in this to field. It won't allow it because this is specifically meant for dates. So the fact that you've written the current date and month here already means that this is an ongoing position. But if you want to be extra safe, you can also mention another keyword next to unemployed in the activity field. You can simply write ongoing, or you can write current or present, and that will add further clarification to this activity. Then the next activity is from 2018 January through 2022 December. She was working as a makeup artist in New Delhi, India, so city and country. Her status in India was a citizen, and then this is the name of her employer, MAC. It's a makeup brand. So notice that this time period, 2018 January through 2022 December, is immediately before this time period, 2023 January through 2023 September, because after 2022 December is 2023 January. So this is consistent, this is linear, no gaps in time. Then her third personal history from 2017 January through 2017 December is immediately preceding this time period, 2018 January through 2022 December. So 2017 December and 2018 January. So this is consistent, linear, no gap in time. This is highly important. You cannot leave gaps in time. That's why I'm emphasizing these dates. And then the next one was from 2014 June through 2016 December. She was working as a fashion consultant. This is the city and country, status, name of the employer, and so on and so forth until she completed her 10 years of activity information. Now this was a very structured, linear and straightforward example. So this was very easy to put down in this section. But I understand there can be all sorts of activity examples where people can have multiple jobs at the same time, or there can be overlap from one job to the next, or there can be part-time jobs while an applicant is studying. So the question is how to account for that. So my suggestion is to keep this particular section in the form linear, straightforward and as simple as possible, and any additional details about multiple jobs or overlaps or any similar activity which makes it complicated, you can simply take a Word document and write all those details there and explain all your overlaps and multiple positions there. You can simply label that document as 5669 additional information about personal history, and then you can upload that in the other category in your additional supporting documents section. And that way you keep this section consistent and simple, but you're also not missing out on any important information by providing that additional letter of explanation. The next up is section E, membership and association with organizations. So if this applies to you, then you can provide that information here, but this did not apply to my wife, and my guess is this is not really going to apply to most people. You can simply write none in this first text input field under name of organization. Just write none and you can move on. Same thing for this section F, government positions. If you have held any government positions, then you can provide the information here. Otherwise, you can just write none under this first text input field, country or territory level of jurisdiction. You can write none here and you can move on. Same thing for this military section. If it applies to you, provide the information. Otherwise, just write none in the first text input field and you should be good. So next up is section H, addresses. So this follows very similar logic to what we saw in personal history section. You provide your addresses where you have lived in the past 10 years or since your 18th birthday. And you start from the most recent, meaning your current address, and then you go back in time. So you'll notice that in this address 1 section, this to date, the street and number, city or town, province, state or district, country or territory, postal code and zip code, these are all pre-populated and you're not going to be able to edit these fields here. Why? Because all this information, this address information, your current address is being picked up from the address information that you put down in this profile page right here. So this to date is set in the portal to automate to the current month and year, and this is all correct. So you don't need to panic. This simply means that this is your current address where you have been living right now at the time of submitting your application. It simply asks you to put the from date. So since when have you been living in your current address? So again, let's say my wife is an inland applicant and she has been living in this current address since January 2023. So she's simply going to put January 2023 in the from date section. Everything else is already taken care of. And this becomes her first or the most current address where she has been living, and she has been living here since January 2023. Then you're going to click on add another and address 2 will open up. This is where my wife put the from date as 2018 January until 2022 December. So this time period is immediately preceding this first time period. Again, the idea of not leaving any gaps. This is December 2022 and this starts at January 2023. And for these 5 years, she provided her exact address in New Delhi where she was living, her postal code, country and everything. Then address 3, similar logic from January 2017 through December 2017. For this 1 year, again living at this address. This period is immediately before the address 2. Then similarly address 4 from 2014 June through 2016 December, and then address 5 and 6 and so on and so forth. And again, this was a very simple example. So I understand there can be complicated situations where let's say you had overlaps in addresses, or you had remote jobs where you were living at a particular address but you were working for an employer that was located elsewhere. So all those situations, all those details you can provide in a separate letter of explanation. Provide those details there and then upload that in the other category when you upload your additional supporting documents. But try to keep this as simple as possible. Don't complicate this address section in this form. Be simple, concise, don't leave any gaps in time. Any additional information, you can always use a letter of explanation. And just a quick note, any short trips or vacations that you may have taken, you don't have to account for those in your address history section, because primarily your address was still the same when you took your vacation and let's say you traveled to some other country for a 2 or 3 week period. You don't have to account for that here. If you have done that and if it applies to you, you will already provide information in your travel history form. So don't provide information about your vacations or short trips or travel information in this particular address history section. This is primarily about your residential address where you maintain residency over the past 10 years or since your 18th birthday. And once you're done with that section, you'll be brought to this page. So you scroll down under the declaration section. This is where my wife will type her full name exactly as per her passport to provide her electronic signature for this 5669. And then she clicks on complete and return to application, and that completes her form. So here's your profile page. If you scroll down, this is where you add your dependents if you have any dependents in your application. You are not going to be able to add your dependents inside the digital forms. So you'll have to add your dependents here in this profile page, and then they will show up in specific sections in the digital forms. And dependents in the context of a spousal sponsorship application are your children who are under the age of 22, not married nor in a common law relationship, and not permanent residents or citizens of Canada. The principal applicant's mom, dad, brothers or sisters and permanent resident or Canadian citizen children are not considered dependents. Also, the sponsor is not considered dependent. So here in the introduction page of the 5669, you'll notice it says you, the principal applicant, must fill out this form for yourself and on behalf of any of your family members. So family members means dependent children, nobody else here, who are 18 years of age or older, who are not already Canadian citizens or permanent residents. This basically means that the principal applicant should only fill out another version of 5669 for their dependent child if that dependent child is 18 years of age or older. If your dependent child who's added in the application is under the age of 18, then you don't need to fill out another 5669. You will not even be given the option to fill out a 5669. So let's take an example and this is going to become clear. So coming back to the profile page, let's actually add a dependent here who's under the age of 18. So let's assume my wife has a 10-year-old child, so he's under 22, not married nor in a common law relationship and not a permanent resident or Canadian citizen. So since he meets all these 3 criteria, he is considered a dependent. So my wife will add that child here because he's a true dependent. And let's come back to 5669. So as you can see, nothing shows up here. Why? In this case, the child is just 10 years of age, so he's under the age of 18. So the portal rightly identified that and did not give my wife the option to fill out another 5669 for the child. So basically, my wife can just fill out a 5669 for herself she has nothing to do with the dependent child here because the dependent child does not meet this condition right here. Let's now go back to the profile page and change the date of birth of the child. So let's say the child was born in 2005. So now the child is in the 18 or older category. So if you go back to 5669, you'll notice here that another row has appeared for the child underneath the row of the principal applicant. Why? Because the portal rightly identified the age of the child. Now the child meets the 18 years of age or older category. The child is obviously not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. So this child is again a true dependent, but because this child is an adult, he's in the 18 or older category, and that's why the portal is telling my wife to first complete a 5669 for herself and then complete another 5669 for the 18 or older child. So that's the only difference when you have a dependent child in your application. If the dependent child is under the age of 18, another 5669 is not required. If the dependent child is 18 or older, then a 5669 may be required depending on whether the child qualifies as a dependent. So that was 5669. Next up on the list is 0008, generic application for Canada. For a tutorial on that video is here. I'll see you there.